I would say up until 8 years ago, I was a pretty staunch atheist. And in fact, I was just talking about this earlier. The first time I sat with ayahuasca was the, within an hour, there was just this deepest realization of, oh, like in that moment, it went from like always thinking there's no God, no God, no God to I get it. That God that I didn't believe in doesn't exist, but I get what it is now. And since then, I've really developed a deep connection and feeling to this cosmic force that I do feel in me, through me, around me, um, and and I feel like let me try and get the words for this. Let me just drop in. If I really separate from, if we would say lowercase s, self, and move beyond my own, what feels like move my own beyond my own body, I feel like I can receive guidance and wisdom, and sometimes in a way where it might be the complete opposite thing of what I was thinking. Sometimes if I feel that I'm in an activated or triggered state, I can go to that place and I get the exact words of wisdom that I need to receive. And whether that's already in me, but it's in a different place, or if it's exists in the in through and as all around, and I'm able to draw in that. And the reason I say that's one of the most important things to me is because I trust it. It's I've found over the years now it's become very trustable, and has guided me through things in ways that have really been hugely beneficial. So I guess that's what it means to me.
That's a beautiful meaning. I love it that, you go from atheist, which is not believing that there's anything. And I've always thought that, you know, once I met God through ayahuasca as well, I didn't have a framework or reference for God before ayahuasca. So just to preface, I love the idea that you also didn't have a framework for it. And I just didn't know. I wasn't even willing to commit to agnostic. I was like, I don't know. Like it doesn't, how would I know? Like it was where I was before. And that you through that had this transformative experience where something else became palpable and real for you. I had a similar experience. I was hanging off the rafters of a building in a Maloka in ayahuasca, screaming to the ceiling, God, 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 until there was no ceiling, there was no roof, there was no nothing, and there was just presence. And I went, oh, and it wasn't anything that anyone had ever believed in. It was what allowed anything to be believed. And I thought that
Mm.
about, the nature of atheism and the bounty of this concept that we're working with, that we're calling God, which is beyond any religious philosophy or beyond any way anyone has ever articulated it, right? But so
Mm.
many of us through these experiences, especially ayahuasca, have tapped into it, and it becomes something that is not only real for us, it's obvious and was always there beforehand. And I just have thought about it that, that presence allows us, it has so much generosity. It allows us to use it to create the atheist. It allows us to use it to create the doubt and indecision around the agnostic. It allows us to be the believer or the one to have faith in something that may or may not be true for that period of time, but it is constant. It is a constant, like gravity is in our life. Like that's one of the things I loved when I found gravity in a sensorial sense was like, there's always gravity. I'm in the
Mm.
airplane, there's gravity. I'm underwater, there I can feel it. I'm in the chair, I feel it. And then that's what I felt like about this presence. And I also used the term God. It was obvious that that term was the original term to describe what, in our language, in English, to describe that phenomena we were talking about.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like whenever I talk about God, I have to preface to people. I don't mean a man in the sky with a beard, um, because I feel like for so many people, that's the image they have, and it's really interesting because my daughter's mom and I we separated when she was 1, and we co-parent pretty well. With my daughter's 7 now, and recently she was asking about God, and her mom's position is God isn't real, and that's what she tells her. And my position is, yeah, God is absolutely real. And I said, what do you think? She said, I think God is real. I feel like I can feel God. I said, yeah. I said, incredible. I said, so can I. And then I have to have a conversation with the mom, and mum's saying, like, I don't think we should be telling her God's real. I said, well, first of all, I like so much of my life, because she doesn't really know that much about what my life is like now compared to when I was with her, which was, almost 7 years ago. A lot has changed. And I said, you're okay to tell her about Santa and the Tooth Fairy, and that those things are real. I said, what's the issue with God? And it's just funny how so many people can be so activated or triggered by that word. So I always feel like I have to preface, I don't mean that God when I talk to people about it, but that word, I feel like we kind of need to reclaim it. Really, I feel like we need to reclaim God. I feel like we need to reclaim the word religion, and to be okay with those things, and not for them to have to mean what they maybe once meant. Because I think so many people were right to not believe in that God, and I think that's where I got to. It was more like, that God that I'm being told about, that doesn't feel right to me. I don't believe in that. And as then realizing, okay. So it should be, rather than that doesn't sound right, God doesn't exist. Maybe it should be, that doesn't sound right, so what is God?
I like the idea of challenging God and challenging our understandings. I think a lot of people are rebelling now against an institution, as if the institution could have ever had the right to define what God was. It would think, in my mind, that again, inside out, you would think God has to represent something so much greater than anyone's religion to describe it. And so the principle couldn't sit within religion. Religions would maybe focus on it or about it, but not be it. And in my mind, if I were rebelling against the nature of a religion, I wouldn't be rebelling against God. I would be rebelling against the container that anyone had tried to ever put around that. And I think that that's been muddied. And in doing so, we've lost the ability to just accept the terms, maybe to have a meaning beyond the way we were propagandized or taught to believe in the meanings themselves.
Yeah, it feels like we have to liberate the term.
Yeah, I call it being syllabically challenged. I'll tell people on retreat, I go, look, I'm not challenged by these syllables. These are syllables. Like, what's a word? A word can come from a syllable or multi-syllable. So word, one syllable, God, one syllable. What's the point of that? It's a sound. It's a symbol for something. And I'm not asking somebody to believe in that thing. I'm asking somebody to recognize that we have at least a word or a symbol, and it's pointing to something. It might be pointing, in the case of like God, to what I think of as everything. What I loved about ayahuasca and these kinds of sacred plant ceremonies is that you weren't asked to believe in something to have an experience. You just had to show up to have an experience and see if it affected your beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? And it didn't require a buy-in other than the willingness to go and have the experience. Like, it wasn't even like I had to be told it's a good movie or a bad movie or a 3-star movie. It's just like, hey, show up and have an experience and you tell me what happened. And out of it, a really whelming number of people would come out of it and say something to the equivalent of, I saw God, or I met God, or I met spirit, or I met, supernatural something. There's that quality to it that, is just in essence larger than the normal bubble of life.